Good morning. So as mentioned, I'm here today to speak to you about threat intelligence, but more specifically, applying threat intelligence and how that application of threat intelligence can drive security outcomes. So what is threat intelligence at a really basic level? Contextualized data that's been through a level of analysis and processing and assessment to form intelligence. The First Institute's definition of cyber threat intelligence is on the screen behind you. I think it's pretty good, but to summarize it, I like to consider intelligence as decision advantage. And in the cyber realm, that's decision advantage when looking to make changes to combat your cyber adversaries. There's a lot of it. There's a lot of data, thousands of IOCs every day, hundreds of reports, incidents, updates, vulnerabilities being exploited. And it spans multiple formats: geopolitical, strategic, technical, malware intelligence, vulnerability intelligence. You can look at general landscapes, specific landscapes, all the way through to the hyper-specific. And each one of those has its own disciplines. Each one of those has its own audience sets. Each one of those has its own context and calls to action. And for this reason, this phrase, "Can I have some intelligence, please?" doesn't help drive security outcomes. Intelligence is a process, not a product. If it's not put together in a process that considers outcomes, that considers the consumption, it's not going to drive as much value as if you just took it off a shelf. So what is good intelligence? What is strong and what is weak intelligence? So poor threat intelligence is overwhelming. It's unfaithful to intelligence requirements. This makes it irrelevant. It's reactive. Scott and Nico talked a lot previously about how we can get to a proactive stance. That's the gold standard. And it's misinterpreted or misinterpretable. And we find this happens when organizations or intelligence teams favor collection over consumption. They want to gather as much intelligence as possible without any understanding on how to apply that on a network. And the converses of all of those bullet points are true for strong intelligence. So it scales well. It satisfies your intelligence requirements. It answers the questions you've got, provides the decision advantage. It's relevant, it's proactive, it's timely, it's clear, and of course applied in the intended context. And when we talk about applying threat intelligence with Secure, we do this with the intelligence cycle. This is direction of intelligence, your collection, your process, your analysis, and your dissemination with feedback. So, direction, building intelligence requirements. This is critical. This focuses your collection. This enables you to scale it. So each item has to be made in accordance with the customer estates that we operate in a managed service situation. And that's our metric. If we satisfy intelligence requirements, we're doing a good job. If we're producing intelligence that doesn't answer any questions from anybody, even if it's really technical, really complex, it's irrelevant. Do this in a proactive way with our outcomes in mind. And on the screen behind you, you can see the types of intelligence that we collect, and each one of those overlaps with our customer base. And how do we scale our collection? So the diagram you can see at the moment on the screen on the right-hand side is a conceptual model developed by the SANS Institute called the Pyramid of Pain. And what this does is it shows where you can disrupt a threat actor, where you can apply technical and tactical threat intelligence. And at the bottom of this, we have more structured data, our IOCs, our hash values, our IP addresses, domain names. And if we can disrupt adversaries at this level, it's effective, but it's trivial for the threat actors to respond. If we can disrupt the threat actors at the top of this pyramid, with the artifacts, with the tooling, undermining their tactics, techniques, and procedures, the very knowledge of how they know how to operate on a victim network, that's where the value is. And this is where we should focus. So how do we scale that? The structured intelligence, automate where we can. And we do this. We automate our collection. It's targeted still. We collect indicators of compromise, structured intelligence from post-exploitation servers as they're used proactively, as they're stood up before they're used in a network, malware intelligence, And we can automate that searching. We hunt across our customers' estates daily. We can integrate it with our tools automatically. And that gives the threat intelligence capability, the threat hunters and the managed service consumers of our intelligence the ability to then focus on the high-value elements, the unstructured. Difficult to scale because it's human-operated, but you can do it to some extent. You must start with your intelligence requirements. You need to understand what you can consume, what your technology stack is, what your processes are. With us working hand in glove with our managed service teams, of course, we're in a great position to do that. And you need to know what actions can be taken. There's no decision advantage if the decision you arrive at cannot be implemented. And once you've perfected that, you can extract, you can contextualize, and you can apply your collections. And this is how we apply it. So we'll take our finished or our almost finished intelligence, and we will wash that over the customer estates that we operate with our security posture analysis team. And our security posture analysis team pretty much does what it says on the tin. They provide peacetime value by highlighting to our customers the environmental conditions on their network that enable attacks to succeed. And when we overlay this with our threat intelligence, we have what we call our applied threat intelligence concept, and that drives our outcomes. I want to give you an example of this, a relatively recent example. 3CX. It's a voice-over IP software company, and it was compromised. It was compromised by actors operating out of North Korea. That's been assessed with relatively high confidence now. And they managed to poison the build process of the software, which meant 3CX were pushing legitimate signed binaries to up to 600,000 customers. But these binaries were poisoned. This is a significant event in cyberspace. Now, what we wanted to do was support our customers to provide answers to the questions, and support the decision makers and the risk owners and the CISOs of our customers, or any combination of the three, with updates as to what is the threat. Are we exposed? Are we impacted? And what are the actions and objectives? What is the impact likely to be? That gives them an impression of what the risk picture would be. So we had pretty clear intelligence requirements now. We were collecting against this. And one thing to note is details were emerging. This was an out-of-hours incident. Details were emerging throughout the evening. There's a point where it was irresponsible to report to our customers on rumors, what we call in the intelligence community, rumint, without any kind of corroboration or collaboration or shareable intelligence from a trusted authority. We also wouldn't share this without any indication of so what. What does this mean for you, the consumer of that intelligence? And we could work with our security posture analysis team. Even though we didn't have all the intelligence to hand, we could provide ourselves a proactive footing by understanding what we needed to collect, and as soon as we could collect it, we could apply that. And we found that we did have customers that used 3CX. They were exposed. As we collected the intelligence, we could apply that, and we found pretty quickly that we did have customers that had downloaded the malicious 3CX installer. So there is exposure, there is impact. We managed to build, through intelligence, proactive threat hunting rules, methodologies. Our With Secure Intelligence team built in detection rules to our technology stack to enable or to ensure that we can then also provide our customers with some level of assurance as to how they were protected. And we reported that with specifics to affected customers. We could also report the inverse of that to the unaffected customers. And for the good of the community, we publicized some of that too. And the outcomes were there. You can see in the graph in the top left, the number of 3CX installs dropped off a cliff. That was the recommendation. Our MDR coverage was in place. I mentioned earlier that if we can disrupt threat adversaries in the IOC space, in the hash values, in the IP address ranges, it's relatively easy for them to recover. So if we assume that they're going to recover, and our disruption at that level is short-term, we have MDR coverage, which means we have continued coverage. And actually, one of the key outcomes from this is even though we had customers using 3CX, we had customers that had been served a poisoned 3CX updata file. We had no evidence. We had no evidence of any further malicious activity between our point of intervention and between them serving up the file. And these are our outcomes. On the right-hand side, we can see the outcomes we think apply to our managed services customers. One of the key points I want to make here is we operate upstream of our managed service providers, which means if you utilize one of those services and you don't have an intelligence team that's dedicated to consuming threat intelligence, it's being done for you through us. And these are delivered through our managed service providers: incident readiness, attack surface management, incident response, and detection and response. And as Scott and Nico mentioned in the meeting before, with threat intelligence supporting that, we sit in the middle of that. Now, just to finish, I want to really reiterate my point. Collection doesn't equal outcomes. So to prepare myself for this presentation, I set myself a challenge of collecting as much threat intelligence as I possibly could in an unfocused manner in 1 hour. In a 24-hour period, I managed to find almost 200,000 malware samples. 24 hours. That's 200,000 per day, roughly, on an online malware repository. I started with a clean install of an open-source threat intelligence platform called MISP, and I managed to ingest over 460,000 indicators of compromise, called MISP attributes, in about 30 minutes. There was more to come, but I'd set myself the time limit. And an RSS feed had provided me about 110 reports. Every day, I didn't want to time myself reading those, so I asked Google's Bard to do it for me. And that estimated an average adult would take 1 to 2 hours every day to skim read, not even to absorb properly. It's time-consuming. And this doesn't include vulnerability intelligence, strategic, the processing, the authoring. And this is why off-the-shelf threat intelligence cannot be as conducive to high outcomes as co-securing with intelligence in mind. To the extent where poor intelligence can actually be a distraction. If you're constantly chasing down repeatable low-value processes, you have no time to focus on the high-value intelligence outcomes. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Timothy. Now we have time for one audience question, so you can boldly raise your hand and we will get a microphone to you. I thought that was a raised hand, but it looked like it was a raised camera. So here's your chance. Timothy, what are you most looking forward to in the next 2 days at the Sphere?
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, there's some really great booths out there. Mm-hmm. One of the things that's personally exciting for me is looking at this kind of co-security element. So the elevation option is really exciting for me, and it gives, from a threat intelligence perspective, because I am pretty biased, it gives us a lot of opportunity to get stuck in with some new and interesting challenges for our customers.
Yeah. Well, sounds great. Let's have a great 2 days. You'll be around. Let's give him another round of applause. Thank you so much.